All In Sports Network. We love sports.
Ben Peck, All In Aggies here, Monday, September 2nd, Labor Day. Putting in the work for you here because it's just a labor of love for us over here at the All In Sports Network. Ben Peck here is part of the Rogue Media Network as well. We've got so much to talk about. I had to take stuff out of the show because we were going to go on for like an hour, and it's already, by the time I'm taping this, it's like 7:20. So we got to get this going. We had so many tidbits to talk about, but really two I want to hone in on from the Monday afternoon press conference with Mike Elko. Number one, the passing attack was not there. And notably, we got to talk to Conner Weigman for the first time since the Notre Dame game. Not something he had to do. I think he should be applauded for that. Does not excuse the performance from him or the team collectively that we saw Saturday, but certainly interesting to hear from Conner. We'll dive into that. And then we'll dive into a little volleyball as well. Texas A&M having the home opener off to a 3-0 start for the year. But back to the football side, also some disappointing news on the injury front. Mark Nabou, starting center, out for the year. Season-ending injury. On 3 reporting torn ACL. Don't believe Mike Elko specified other than lower leg or something along those lines, but certainly that seems to be what would be the case. So, we're still picking up the pieces from the loss to Notre Dame, trying to analyze what went wrong, just how bad is the situation on offense, but also how much of a factor did the Notre Dame defense play, a unit that returns, I believe, I heard 10 starters from a team that obviously had very notable performances against, Ohio State and Marvin Harrison Jr., what he did or didn't do, something like, I think, 35 yards along those lines. Caleb Williams, as a Bears fan, my quarterback, less than 200 yards, 3 interceptions against that Notre Dame defense, which has a couple NFL-level guys on there who could have gone but came back and now are wreaking havoc and might be a really good team. We'll dive into all that here starting now. But let's start with the passing attack, kind of going off on those lines. Obviously not good enough, nowhere near good enough. 12 for 30, 100 yards passing, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That is, unless you're Army or Navy, that is not going to win you many football games with that type of stat line. You don't need me to tell you that. The thing, and something that was interesting Mike Elko talked about after the game was the separation of the wide receivers. He basically said, look, Notre Dame was just playing man the whole night. There was no easy throws to get into a rhythm. No, we tried some rubs, tried some interesting ways, some pick plays to try to get guys open. That didn't pan out at all. They were not given anything to Conner Weigman and the Aggies. The run game was there at times. The protection, I think, held up for the most part at times. But the accuracy was not there from Conner Weigman. The separation was not there from the wide receivers. And I don't know if Mike Elko is going to get into this in the soundbite we have from him, but he talked about when he talks about receivers not getting separation, it's not just on the talent level, the receivers beating their guy. It's also how they're calling these plays, how they're designing the routes. So I think he tried to walk back some of the inference of what maybe came across Saturday night in terms of like our receivers just got beat all night by Notre Dame and nothing we could really do about it beyond our guys just got to make a play. I think he tried to clarify that there is some coaching involved with that as well. But obviously the topic of conversation that everyone has loved to hatch on to, Conner Weigman, was this a fluke? Was this a one-off? Is this what we should expect? Is this going to be the kind of standard for the rest of the year? Certainly a low point, even if you think maybe this is more in line with what we should expect. I think even those people would acknowledge, yes, but on average, he'll be better than he was Saturday against a really good Notre Dame team. But Conner Weigman, first of all, we did not know as members of the media who exactly we were going to talk to. We knew Cyrus Allen was going to come up to talk. A man of very few words if you saw the press conference. But players, TBD. We get in there. We're waiting through. We hear Conner Weigman is on his way to the podium. He's going to talk to us. Number one, I'll preface his comments that we're about to play by saying kudos to Conner Weigman. If he did not want to go, even if he was asked, he could have gotten out of that. I mean, if you know how these things works, he did not have to be there. If he did not, I don't want to say want to be there, but if he wanted to not be there, he could have gotten out of it. So I think it takes a lot to step up and take ownership of a just awful performance, if we're being honest. Not all of it on him, but certainly a lot to do with his inaccuracies. And then Mike Elko they both talked about the footwork, that he's kind of had happy feet back there in the pocket. Wasn't setting his feet, wasn't, pushing off, stepping up in the pocket to get that accuracy. And I asked Conner, hey, you're coming back from an injury, first game back, in terms of being confident to stand in there, push off, and throw, in terms of kind of hopping around. Any part of that maybe a subconscious thing where obviously if you plant your leg, plant your foot, you get rolled up on. That's how maybe a big injury can happen. Not to say physically he's hurting, but is that maybe in the back of his mind as a reason why he steps, he throws, and he's not really keeping his feet set? He said absolutely not, as you'll hear. But here's kind of some of the highlights of what we heard from Conner Weigman and Mike Elko talking about what went wrong specifically under center with the quarterback.
I mean, I take it back to my baseball days. So what, next pitch? I mean, that's how I've always approached any sport I play. Like I told my teammates this morning, point blank period, I have to be better. I mean, there's no excuses for how I played. Like literally point blank period, I got to be better, and that's what I told them this morning. Absolutely not. I mean, I was ready to go. I'm 100%. My mind was nowhere thinking about any injuries at all. I mean, I got to be better with my feet, and I got to be more accurate, and it's simple as that. I mean, I don't back down from anything. I'll face it head on. I'll be the first one to tell you I didn't play the way I'm supposed to play, and point blank period, I got to be better. And being back healthy, I felt like I've been a leader in that locker room, and everyone looks to me, and I take that with a sense of pride, and I feel that responsibility, and I hold that responsibility near and dear to my heart, and I got to be that guy. And like I told him this morning, I'm going to step up. I don't let one game define me who I am as a person. I don't let one game define me who I am as a player, and you got to go bounce back, show up to work today, and let's go.
As it regards to Conner, I think the thing we just talked to him about, it looked like his feet just never got settled, and maybe some of the past residue kind of showcased itself in his first time back. He had much cleaner pockets than I think he played like. I think his feet just got out of control underneath him a little bit. I think that caused a lot of his inaccuracies. I think when you watched him settle his feet at different times, which didn't happen a lot, but when it did happen, he was able to deliver the ball the way he's capable of. But on the interception he threw to Noah, probably one of the most noticeable examples, his feet just kind of were all over the place. And so he knows it. He saw it. I think he's confident in the corrections he needs to make, and he'll have a great week of practice and put himself in position to make the improvements we need to make. And it certainly isn't all on him by any stretch of the imagination. We still got to do a better job throughout the game of keeping pressure off of him. We still got to do a better job throughout the game of creating separation and running routes. And we got to get the passing game on track. We know that.
As he said, they know it. We know it. I don't think it's taken anybody by surprise, anything that they said there. And with the passing game as well, I asked Elko about, in terms of the short, intermediate, deep passing game options, because basically the way he explained it after the game, as we said, they were playing man. They were pressing up on all these guys. They weren't allowing anything easy. So they were trying to get these short, quick passes complete to kind of get a rhythm, build up something. And, maybe that could lead to an intermediate route. We really didn't see, to what I remember, like a legit deep route at all that actually got thrown out. And I asked Coach, I'm like, so what has to happen for that to happen? Is it, run game, play action, offensive line? And if you're familiar with the setup in that press conference room, there's kind of these lights that are sort of eye level with where we're at in the back with the cameras. And I couldn't really tell, and it kind of gets in our way too. He kind of paused, and I didn't know if he didn't understand what I was saying, but I rephrased it, and he's like, oh, no, I get what you're saying. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, of what we need to do to open up any passing game that's not just a little dump down if we need one, because you can't have teams just being able to tee off on, like, it's almost like bring the infield in, bring the outfield in. He's not hitting it to the fence. Like, we can just, focus on ground balls, line drives. He ain't hitting it over his head. How do you avoid that dynamic on defense? I think that's something they're still working through, clearly. Another thing to keep in mind moving forward, I know there was a lot of discussion with the receiving core. Moose Muhammad, not, if your receivers are having trouble getting separation, as Coach said, Moose Muhammad has certainly had games and moments where he has flashed. He has been a little inconsistent. I was going to ask about that today. We ran out of time, but I think interesting to monitor moving forward was the way the Notre Dame game playing out, specifically kind of limiting what Moose does well, or the certain situations where he's useful, or they needed those, whatever those plays they needed to try to get the rhythm and get things open. And Moose is less suited for that type of stuff and more suited for other stuff. I know people pointed out that he was on the field. He did run a few routes, maybe struggled with that a little bit, but I think he's a talent that's too good to, especially if you have a thin wide receiving core and you're having question marks about the wide receiving core, he's too good not to run out there at some point and figure out or be a factor in this passing game. And then another guy, Terry Bussey, who, we've all just been kind of sitting back and watching. Side note, I've also been interested. Bussey wears number 2, same as Ruben Owens. And, originally he's got the defensive practice jersey and Ruben Owens has the offensive. I'm not sure what they would have done if they really want Terry Bussey to move over to the offensive side, because then you have to make sure he's not on the field with Ruben Owens. So obviously you can correct that moving forward. So I don't know, maybe if this is a late development, I guess is my point. But Terry Bussey's been working out with the wide receivers. They're trying to get him out there. Elko was asked about that, said it didn't seem like there was going to be just like the Terry Bussey show anytime soon in terms of putting a ton on his plate. But certainly this passing game needs options. They need answers. Accuracy goes a long way. Protection goes a long way. As you heard, though, it's not like Weigman was getting blitzed all night. He had his moments to make plays that were there, and certainly with better throws, at least could have negated, and protecting the ball, taking care of the ball, you could have certainly negated a lot of the negatives that we saw there as well. I will say too, I've seen some national people that I have a lot of respect for, Josh Pate most notably, kind of a lot of people down on Conner Weigman nationally after this game. I understand being down on the game, but him as a prospect, as a, is this guy it? And I saw people tweeting out the 2022 signing class quarterback rankings with Cade Klubnik struggling as well and saying like, oh, this whole class is washed. I think that's a little hyperbolic. I think, listen, he's had 9 pretty good to really good starts and before, and then, one really bad one, and there's no sugarcoating it, but he can make plays, he can make throws, under pressure. His first career start against Ole Miss, they get off to a fantastic start. And I do get encouraged, and I was encouraged by the way we saw Weigman moving around with his feet, not just from a health standpoint, but I think the level of running and the type of running that we saw from Weigman is the type of stuff you want to see moving forward if you're a Texas A&M fan. Just sprinkling in here and there. He's not really taking huge licks. He's not going to, take a beating and a punishment, but you do have to respect him and you do have to honor it. And you can't just lock in on him as a passer or just, the ball carrier, tailback in the backfield, whoever it is. You have to, evaluate him as a legitimate option on any given play to take off, tuck in and run, and just being versatile as we've seen him be. And that was maybe the most disappointing part about the whole moving around too much in the pocket. To my assessment, he's been very good about his pocket presence these first few years and moving around and finding the space, setting his feet, making a good throw. Just went away on Saturday. Don't know if that was just built up. By the way, I'll just say last thing on Conner Weigman. There was some speculation. Was he feeling well? Was he ill? Was he sick? The word is from both coach and Conner, took a hit to the gut, kind of rattled his stomach funny, came off the sideline to the sideline for that one play, threw up, but relatively is fine. This was not like he was having a Willis Reed moment out there trying to will his team through all sorts of stuff. That's what we were told. But I think we'll have better outings, many, many better outings in the future for Conner Weigman, number 15. But listen, you better, because so goes 15, so goes the season, in my opinion. You cannot win games reliably throwing for even 200 yards a game, I think. Defense is great. You can lean on them, but you need more than that. I will say, I think super last thing. One thing that I guess was encouraging to me a little bit, I've always felt really good about teams that can win when they're clearly not playing their best. If within the variance of outcomes and the range of, performance levels, if you could play at like a 3 for you and still win, that says a lot to me about how good you are. That like you're clearly not playing your best and you're still almost winning. It's almost like when we watch A&M basketball and they're winning by like 2 at the half and Wade Taylor only has 3 points. You're like, okay, that's not going to last. He's going to go off or he's going to get some points somewhere. So buckle up. That's kind of how I felt after seeing Texas A&M have a chance still late in the game to go down and score and tie the game up even after an abysmal performance to that point. All right, now let's talk about the offensive line. Maybe the bigger news long-term, just because the immediate impact, Mark Nabou, center, out for the rest of the year. On 3 reporting torn ACL. I don't know that Mike Elko specified it, but beyond sort of a lower leg injury. But, I mean, that certainly adds up, right? Mark Nabou out for the starting center job. It will be going over to Kayole Fayu. And I totally butchered his name. I had it up here for a second, but Fayu is going to take over as the starting center. And I will say, Coach talked about, the battle and how close that was. How long did it take for y'all to settle in on who was going to be that guy? It sounded like, I think Elko said up until Thursday, not necessarily that specific position, but Thursday they were still evaluating the best options on the offensive line. So not to put anything down on Mark Nabou. Obviously, you want to keep everybody available that you can, but it does seem like Fayu, who came in, played pretty well, he was like a legitimate option for that starting spot. It was not this huge drop-off, even in their mind, even in practice. So hopefully moving forward, that means it shouldn't be a huge loss if you can stay healthy otherwise. That's a big if and kind of a necessity at this point for Texas A&M because, again, you've got to be able to run the ball. You've got to be able to protect not just Conner Weigman, whoever it is back there, quarterback, Jalen Henderson, Marcel Reed. And you've got to – you're going to face probably even better front sevens than you did against Notre Dame. Notre Dame, very good, but I still think they're built on that secondary and on the back end. You're going to face teams in the SEC where that pass rushing attack is going to be way more, and run stopping unit is going to be way more prolific than what you saw with Notre Dame. Because, like I said, Texas A&M was able to move the ball at times offensively. I don't think it's as maybe in your mind, if you think about how bad the game was and you go watch it, I think offensively it will feel like you thought it was worse in your mind than it was. Not say it was great, but like I said, in terms of preventing sacks, opening up holes for the running backs, A&M did have their moments, but need to be more consistent and really maybe more importantly, maintain the level that you're at when you start to go up against elite competition, not just really good, but some of the best, which Notre Dame certainly could be that when we talk secondary. All right. By the way, just for later in the week, as we move along with the show, we'll talk some volleyball before we call it a night here. But the return of power, man, that place. It was kind of interesting. The stadium from the field level for me, it was already jacked up, and it was like, I don't know for the people who aren't like super online and plugged into it, if you're a normal A&M fan and you're not in the weeds on this stuff and you don't just live and breathe it in terms of the in-game experience, I don't know how many fans knew or would have realized, like, especially if like the older crowd, if we're being honest, that like that was like a return, a big deal kind of thing. Because it was funny when they're doing the drum line coming out, and then they do the storm siren and everyone's getting excited. Then they play power. There was like a secondary surge of cheering, but like it was relatively, I don't want to say muted, but it wasn't like a rousing, like, oh my God. It was like, let's go. Oh, they brought it back. Like it's I don't know. That was just kind of funny. We heard from Mike Elko and the players talking about what that was like. We'll hear from that later on in the week. Just something fun. Personally for me, I'll go ahead and talk about this a little bit now. I could have gone either way on it. I mean, I think if you find something really special that really slaps, like I think power is cool and I think it works well. I don't know that it's like the absolute perfect. Like there's nothing better that could be done. I do not think the song last year was great. I like the pyrotechnics and I like the storm siren kind of vibe, but if we're being honest, listen, political views aside, Kanye did say some crazy stuff, so I understood why it happened in the moment. That being said, the instrumental, if you could do that, kind of keep Kanye out of it, I don't mind. I really don't have any strong feelings on it. It was surprising, though, and it was kind of quite a vibe to see that happen the way it did. All right, now let's talk some volleyball. Just real quick before we go, as we said, we cover every sport on campus here. We're not going to break down every single athletic event, singular moment, like a 20-minute breakdown for every single little thing. But we do want to give people their due. We have not talked about volleyball at all to this point this year. And we do have an actual highlight because the Aggies played Texas A&M Corpus Christi here on Labor Day, improving to 3-0. Spoiler, they were able to beat A&M Corpus Christi. But just a quick recap on their season to this point. They opened up with a couple games in Mobile, Alabama, 3-0 win over South Alabama, 3-1 over McNeese State. And we heard from Jamie Morrison, the head coach. He came in. He wasn't even on the schedule to talk to us today. There was a gap from 1 o'clock. We talked to G. Guerreri, the soccer head coach. 1:30, we talked to Mike Elko. Nothing on the itinerary between that. And then Jamie Morrison decides 1:15, I'm going to come in. I play at 4 o'clock, but I'm going to come in at 1:15. So we'll kind of honor his wishes and give him a little love here, talk about their past trip as he gave us this little pregame introduction. As we said, beat South Alabama, beat McNeese, and then another thing that has been kind of a process for A&M. Listen, I'm never going to pretend to talk out of my what about things that I don't know about. Okay, a skill that I think you have to learn in this industry, especially for what I do in like local news television. You have to be able to become like an expert beginner on a lot of topics. Okay, so I'm not here to say I'm like this big volleyball savant, but I do have some insight into sort of the little things around the edges that I know are things to look for, and hopefully can make the viewing experience more helpful for you as to like, okay, how are we doing? Like the Tony Kornheiser thing, watching gymnastics. Like, I watch him go and I don't know what I'm looking at, and I don't know if it's good, but like, I guess like she landed, right? Like I get a lot of people feel that way about sports that they're not super knee deep in. I'm still that way with gymnastics because I don't have to cover gymnastics here, but volleyball, One thing that has been a process for this team is distributing their attacking options to where this is my third year. Every year there has been one lady in particular, of course, Logan Lednicki, who has been a stud, will continue to be these last 2 years at Texas A&M, but you need more than her. You know, it's almost like if Steph Curry is shooting 45% from three, yes, statistically, if you could just get him to shoot threes all game at that percentage, you'll be great. But if you start to just like force it and just say, well, take a three because you're going to make them at 45%. Eventually, he's not going to make them at 45% because everyone's going to know, right? Then he starts making it at 30%. You need options to maintain that level of efficiency. Now, you go back to that well as much as you can while maintaining that level of efficiency. That's kind of what it's like with volleyball, in my understanding. So Logan Lednicki, stud, right? But these last 2 years, they have not had the depth around her to kind of take the pressure off her and to be able to get consistent scoring options without going through number 9. It was a little bit better last year, and so far a little bit better this year. Early results, but a couple transfers that played really well in those 2 games. Taylor Humphrey had 9 kills in the win over South Alabama. Emily Helmuth had 13 kills. And then turn it over to the McNeese State game. Helmuth, 9 kills. Humphrey, 12 kills. So I asked Coach about that. You've got options. It's not just Logan Lednicki. And this is kind of his thoughts early on about the attacking prowess of that front line.
Yeah, I would not want to play against us is the biggest thing. Just I think we got options everywhere. And if you look at, I don't know, the hitting efficiency is a product of the fact that pretty much everybody hit for high efficiency. And when that happens, it's really hard to get any beat on where the ball is going to go. And for us, it's really nice because within, I don't know, a whole match, it could be different from set 1 to set 3 of like who's we're going to more. And it could be different from match to match, and that makes things really, really difficult. And then we got bigger also.
So there you go. It's not just, Humphrey and Helmuth. I believe I'm saying that right, by the way, but if I'm not, apologies. But it's not just those 2. It's not just Logan Lednicki. You've got Ifena Kasapala, who was, I think, the leader in blocks last year, and she can certainly get her kills. And another young lady who really showed out against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Without further ado, for the first time at All In Aggies, we present your highlight recap from Aggie Land. Texas A&M taking on Texas A&M Corpus Christi. We'll let you know how that game played out right now.
All right, battle of the A&Ms, Corpus Christi against the main campus, College Station, Bryan. Jamie Morrison, Chef Morrison in the house for this one. And early on, the first set, A&M in a little bit of trouble, but look at this, kind of a wild sequence here. We'll speed it up real quick, and that results in the block from Emily Helmuth. Aggies trailed 19-13 at one point in this first set, but they were able to get it going. Morgan Perkins comes up huge right down the middle. Aggies win that first set 26-24. Go to the second set. Look at Ellie Stinson. Had to slow this one down, going airborne for the save and then speed it up. Let's get this going. That sets up Morgan Perkins once again. Texas A&M in control in this second set. We told you Taylor Humphrey had a really good weekend in Alabama. She gets a kill here, 4 for her on the night. And then later on, second to last point in the second set, Ava Underwood, ace right on the line. Aggies win that set 25-11. Helmuth with another kill. What was I telling you? The attacking options on this team. So many, so much more than we've seen in recent years. And yes, Logan Lednicki, if you were wondering, she did play quite a role. 12 kills right there. And to tap it off, Ifena Kasapala, she had 2.5 blocks. She also had 9 kills. Aggies win that third set 25-22. They get the sweep over the Islanders.
All right, so there you have it. Texas A&M improves to 3-0 with volleyball. Coming up tomorrow, we'll talk about the Power reunion, the return of Power at Kyle Field for the runouts. We've got some soccer talk, some golf stuff to touch on. We're just getting started here. Again, still kind of getting back to 100% health-wise, but feeling a lot better today. I hope this sounded okay. I tried to adjust the microphone to where it wasn't peaking quite as often as it has starting off. But thank you so much for joining us. A much more typical All In Aggies that we hope to bring you every single day, every single week, content throughout the week. And if you haven't already, subscribe, like, comment, share. Let people know about this show, okay? We just started it. This show does not continue and sustain itself long-term without your support, okay? We, and I specifically, are betting on the 12th man, that there is enough interest, passion to want to know about everything going on campus, the ins and outs. We'll have the same conversations a lot of other people do, but we'll talk about topics that don't get discussed often enough, like not just the other sports, but just, some of the off-the-wall storylines that we don't get to. So be sure to do all that. Ring the bell if you want subscriptions. Subscribe on your podcast feed. That's going to do it for Labor Day. All In Aggies. Ben Peck here with you. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on Tuesday.
All In Sports Network. We love sports.